Jimmy showed a photograph. Keanu Reeves' hands started trembling. "Where did you find this?" he asked, standing up abruptly and walking off stage. The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon. Studio 6B at Rockefeller Center. Another Thursday night taping. Another packed audience. Another A-list celebrity guest sitting across from Jimmy, promoting their latest project, playing games, sharing laughs. This was supposed to be a routine interview with Keanu Reeves. The actor known for being unshakable, humble, endlessly gracious. The kind of guest who made every interview easy because he was genuinely kind, thoughtful, never demanding. Jimmy had prepared the usual segments. A funny story about filming. Maybe a game. Some childhood photos that Keanu's publicist had approved. Standard late-night television fare. Except one photograph in Jimmy's research folder wasn't from Keanu's publicist. It had come from the show's research team, who had dug through public archives and old magazine scans. A photograph from 1993. Nothing scandalous. Just an old picture from a charity event in Los Angeles. Jimmy thought it would be a nice nostalgic moment. A throwback to early career Keanu. Something sweet and harmless. He had no idea that photograph would stop the show. They were 12 minutes into the interview. Keanu was relaxed, smiling, talking about his latest film project. The audience was laughing at his self-deprecating humor. The Roots were playing soft background music. Everything was perfect. "So I found this amazing photo," Jimmy said, reaching under his desk where producers kept surprise materials. "This is from 1993, I think. Some charity event in LA?" He held up the photograph, an 8x10 glossy print, slightly faded with age. It showed a much younger Keanu Reeves at what appeared to be a fundraiser, standing beside a teenage girl in a wheelchair. Both were smiling at the camera. Keanu's entire body went rigid. The smile vanished from his face. His hands, which had been gesturing casually moments before, dropped to his lap and began trembling visibly. His eyes locked onto the photograph with an intensity that made Jimmy's smile falter. "Keanu?" Jimmy said, suddenly uncertain. "You okay, man?" Keanu didn't respond. He was staring at the photograph like it had reached across 30 years and grabbed him by the throat. Then he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper but picked up perfectly by his lapel microphone. "Where did you find this?" Our research team," Jimmy said, lowering the photo slightly, confused by the reaction. "It was in some old magazine archive. I thought it would be cool too." Keanu stood up abruptly. The movement was so sudden that his chair scraped backward across the studio floor with an audible screech. The audience gasped. The Roots stopped playing mid-note. "I'm sorry," Keanu said, his voice tight, controlled, but clearly struggling. Excuse me for just one moment." And then Keanu Reeves, the actor who had done thousands of interviews without incident, who was famous for his composure and grace, walked off stage. Jimmy stopped mid-joke. The entire studio froze. The cameras kept rolling. The director in the control room was shouting into headsets. "What's happening? Did we lose him? Do we go to commercial?" Jimmy sat behind his desk, still holding the photograph, his expression shifting from confusion to genuine concern. The audience was silent, 300 people suddenly uncertain whether they should be worried or if this was some kind of elaborate bit. It wasn't a bit. Questlove leaned forward from his drum kit. "Jimmy?" he called out quietly. "You good?" Jimmy looked at the photograph in his hands, trying to understand what he just triggered. The image seemed innocent enough. Young Keanu, maybe 28 or 29 years old, crouching beside a teenage girl's wheelchair at what appeared to be an outdoor charity event. Both smiling. Nothing obviously traumatic or upsetting. But something about that photograph had broken through Keanu Reeves' carefully maintained composure. Jimmy made a decision. He stood up from his desk, still holding the photo, and looked directly at camera one. "Folks, we're going to take a quick break," he said, his usual comedy cadence completely gone. "Just give us a minute here." The stage manager signaled to go to commercial. The moment the live light went off, Jimmy was moving, heading backstage toward where Keanu had disappeared. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in 1993. Keanu Reeves wasn't yet the global superstar he would become. In 1993, he was a rising actor, successful, recognized, but not yet Neo from The Matrix or John Wick. He was just a working actor trying to navigate Hollywood while maintaining some sense of authenticity and purpose. That year, his sister Kim was diagnosed with leukemia. She was 26 years old, and the diagnosis was devastating. Keanu had always been close to his sister. They'd grown up together through their parents' difficult divorce, through constant moves, through uncertainty. Kim was his anchor, his connection to something real in an industry built on illusion. The treatment was brutal. Chemotherapy, radiation, hospital stays that stretched for weeks. Keanu spent every moment he wasn't working at her bedside. He paid for her treatment, hired the best doctors, and would sometimes sleep in a chair in her hospital room just so she wouldn't wake up alone. During one of Kim's brief periods of remission, Keanu was invited to a charity event in Los Angeles, a fundraiser for children's hospitals and pediatric cancer research. He almost declined. He was exhausted from months of hospital vigils, emotionally drained from watching his sister suffer. But Kim had insisted. "Go," she told him from her hospital bed, still weak from treatment but trying to smile. "Do something good. I'll be here when you get back. And take pictures. I want to see that you actually smiled at least once today." So Keanu went. He showed up at the outdoor charity event in Griffith Park, shook hands, signed autographs, posed for photos with donors. He was going through the motions, his mind still back at the hospital with Kim. And then he met Sarah Martinez. Sarah was 15 years old. She'd been born with muscular dystrophy and had been in a wheelchair her entire life. She was at the charity event with her mother. The foundation had arranged for several young patients to attend and meet the celebrity guests. Sarah's mother later told reporters what happened next, though the story never got much attention at the time. Keanu had been walking through the event, flanked by publicists and handlers, when he saw Sarah sitting alone near the refreshment table, while her mother was in the restroom. He'd walked over without his entourage, crouched down beside her wheelchair, and asked, "What's your name?" "Sarah," she'd said shyly. She recognized him from movies but was too nervous to say much. "I'm Keanu. What are you interested in, Sarah? What do you like to do?" They talked for 20 minutes. About movies. About books. About her dreams of becoming a writer someday. Keanu listened, really listened, the way he'd learned to listen during months of sitting beside Kim's hospital bed, understanding that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply be present. When a photographer approached asking for a picture, Keanu had waved them off. "Only if Sarah wants one," he'd said. Sarah had nodded. That's when the photograph was taken, the one Jimmy Fallon was now holding backstage. But the photograph didn't capture what happened after. Didn't show Keanu giving Sarah his personal phone number written on a napkin. Didn't show him saying, "Call me if you ever need anything. I mean it." Sarah's mother had thought it was a kind gesture that would fade like most celebrity encounters do. She tucked the napkin away and didn't think much more about it. But 3 months later, Sarah ended up back in the hospital with pneumonia, a serious complication for someone with her condition. Her mother, desperate and overwhelmed, found that napkin and called the number, expecting it to be disconnected or to reach an assistant who would politely brush her off. Keanu answered on the second ring. He was in Toronto filming a movie. When he heard that Sarah was in the hospital, struggling, scared, he made arrangements immediately. He flew back to Los Angeles on his one day off, showed up at Children's Hospital at 7 in the morning, and spent 6 hours with Sarah. Not a photo op. No press. No publicist. Just Keanu Reeves sitting beside a sick teenager's hospital bed, reading to her from The Hobbit, telling her stories about movie sets, making her laugh when she was too weak to do much else. He visited 3 more times over the next year. He paid for medical equipment her insurance wouldn't cover. He sent books, letters, called on her birthday. When she was healthy enough to leave the house, he arranged for her to visit movie sets, to meet other actors, to feel like her life was more than hospital rooms and medical treatments. Sarah died in 1998. She was 19 years old. Keanu attended her funeral, sitting quietly in the back, saying nothing to the press that showed up when word leaked that he was there. He never spoke about any of this publicly. Never used it for publicity. Never mentioned Sarah's name in interviews. It was private. Sacred. The kind of grief and connection that existed outside the machinery of fame. And for 25 years Keanu had kept it that way. Until tonight, when Jimmy Fallon innocently held up a photograph that Keanu thought existed only in his memory, and in one family's photo album. Behind the scenes, Fallon made a decision that defied every producer's expectation. Jimmy found Keanu backstage, sitting on a couch in the green room, the photograph from 1993 now in his own hands. His eyes were red. He wasn't crying, but it was close. "I'm so sorry," Jimmy said immediately. "I had no idea that photo would. I would never have shown it if I'd known it would upset you." Keanu looked up. "You didn't upset me," he said quietly. I haven't seen this picture in a very long time. I thought all the copies were gone." "Who is she?" Jimmy asked gently, sitting down beside him. "Her name was Sarah. Sarah Martinez. She had muscular dystrophy. I met her at that charity event, the one in the photo. She was 15. Keanu's voice was steady but soft. She died 5 years later. And I haven't talked about her publicly because it felt wrong to use her story. Like I'd be capitalizing on someone's pain." Jimmy was quiet for a moment. "Keanu, I'm not going to air this segment if you don't want me to. We can cut it completely. Pretend it never happened." Keanu looked at the photograph again. Young Sarah, smiling despite everything. Young Keanu, crouched beside her wheelchair, both of them frozen in a moment of genuine connection. "What if we did something different?" Keanu said slowly. "What do you mean?" "What if we went back out there, and I told her story? Not mine. Hers. Sarah's. Because she deserves to be remembered as more than just someone who was sick. She was funny. She was smart. She wanted to be a writer." He looked at Jimmy. "Could we do that?" Jimmy nodded without hesitation. "Absolutely. Whatever you need." They walked back onto the stage together. The audience, which had been sitting in confused silence for 8 minutes, erupted in relieved applause when they saw Keanu return. Keanu sat back down in the guest chair. Jimmy returned to his desk. But the energy had completely changed. This wasn't going to be a comedy interview anymore. "Okay," Jimmy said to the audience, his tone serious but warm. "So something just happened that we weren't expecting. Keanu, do you want to explain, or should I?" "I'll do it," Keanu said. He looked at the photograph, which was now sitting on Jimmy's desk between them. "That girl in the photo, her name was Sarah Martinez. I met her in 1993 at a charity event. She was 15 years old, in a wheelchair, one of the bravest people I've ever known." The audience was completely silent. "She had muscular dystrophy. We became friends. I visited her in the hospital, sent her books, tried to make her smile when things got hard. She died in 1998. She was 19 years old." Keanu's voice cracked slightly. "I never talked about her because it felt wrong to make her story about me. But seeing that photo tonight, maybe it's time people knew her name. Sarah Martinez. She wanted to be a writer. She loved Tolkien. And she taught me that showing up for people, really showing up, matters more than anything else we do in this business." The studio was silent. Then someone in the audience started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet. Jimmy reached across the desk and placed his blue note cards in front of Keanu. Write her name down, Jimmy said quietly, so we never forget it. Keanu wrote, Sarah Martinez. On the card was shaking hands. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After the show, Keanu donated the photograph to the Muscular Dystrophy Association with Sarah's mother's permission. It now sits in their Los Angeles office with a plaque bearing Sarah's name and her dream. I want to write stories that make people feel less alone. Jimmy keeps that blue note card in his desk drawer. On nights when the show feels like just another job, he takes it out and remembers why any of this matters. Sarah Martinez. Finally remembered. Finally honored. 25 years later.